Right now, the market is extremely volatile. It started off with a drop of around 800 points. I believe that one was in the, was that NASDAQ? But a general few percentage points across the board. As over the weekend, we had seen the Asian markets take a substantial hit. Now, this, of course, has to do with Trump's tariffs. And there was a rumor going around that Trump would pause tariffs for 90 days, resulting in a massive spike in the market, skyrocketing upwards several points. Everybody on the right started cheering, saying, aha, we did it. It's working. And then the rumor was cleared up by Donald Trump to statements from the left saying, literally, the thing that caused the market to jump 10 points, the White House wants you to know they did not do. And then the market reversed course. Right now, it's sitting around minus 1%-ish on average, which is bad considering it's already down like 6,000 points, or that's like what, like 11% or so. So actually, what is that, 15? Almost 20? It's a big deal. It's a big deal for a lot of people, but it's not a big deal for Gen Z, admittedly. Gen Z who don't own homes and don't really hold stocks. It's not a big deal for the younger generation, which makes this whole conflict very interesting. The most affected are going to be retirees and the ultra wealthy, which of course is bad for retirees, but Donald Trump is not backing down, threatening new 50% tariffs on China if Beijing doesn't remove retaliatory duties. Everybody thinks they know what's going on. Everybody thinks they know. I don't. On layer one, universal tariffs don't make a lot of sense. But if the plan is something beyond the first layer of action, then maybe Trump has a plan as to what this will induce and what can be gained from it. It's silly to think that Donald Trump does things without at least thinking he's trying to do something. But of course, that's what the left is arguing. Now, simultaneously, it's kind of funny to see liberals defending capitalism and cheering for private equity. It's kind of funny, I guess. Meanwhile, the right is saying, eat the rich, which is also pretty funny. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot to break down here. I think a key component of this is that Donald Trump is targeting Gen Z. I think Donald Trump and his administration are saying we cannot make America great and survive as a nation if we continually put the needs of the elderly above the needs of the young. I genuinely think that is a factor. But I don't think they're going to come out and say it because the largest voting bloc is, of course, the older generation. But it makes a lot of sense. If you wanted to make America great again, you need only look to the Greek proverb? A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit beneath. If we're going to keep focusing on growing the stock, the index value or the market value and home ownership, but it all benefits those who already have wealth, Gen Z is left holding an empty bag. They can't buy homes. They're not holding any stock. They hold a minimal amount of stocks and corporate equities and things like this relative to the other generations. They are supposed to be right now starting families and buying houses, and they can't. If that does not change, this country implodes. Maybe that's a play Donald Trump is thinking about. I'll tell you this, whether it's intentional or not, it may be what is going to happen. At least one component. So, my friends, shout out to Steven Crowder and the Mug Club. Steven, thank you for shouting out the show. Welcome to the Rumble Morning Lineup. I am Tim Pool, of course, hosting this show for the next hour. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. We got a lot to break down in the market volatility and where we currently are at and what I think it will mean for the younger generation. This is big news for Gen Z, because I'll start off right by saying Gen Z's at the bottom. They own very little. Everybody else takes a hit. In fact, that only benefits Gen Z. They already are having a hard time getting into the market, finding jobs, saving money. If everything gets cheaper, and it is predicted that housing prices will drop because of this, depending on how it plays out, this could benefit Gen Z greatly, which we desperately need. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and buy some Cast Brew coffee. Now, admittedly, my friends, Cast Brew relies on imports. We do. Coffee, for those of you who understand it, it's all about regional roasts. So if you pop over to our ground coffee, you can see that we've got Misty Mountain's Costa Rican blend. It's from Costa Rica. If you want it, it's going to be tariffed. So we'll see how that affects us. We don't have the largest of margins, but we can absorb some of the cost. This is why I say on layer one, universal tariffs don't exactly make sense. we can't just grow Costa Rican coffee in America. It's Costa Rican. We do have Kona coffee. So there are some limitations here. That being said, I ain't crying about it. The Democrats are going to be like, we'll be fine. I'm okay with this, okay? Because I'll tell you this right now, boom, this is where I'm excited. BooniesHQ.com. Do you guys own a step-on Sneck and Find Out skateboard? American-made, American-pressed, American wood? Yeah, we make it in America. We had the option to make it in China. We said no. So when Trump says he's going to raise these tariffs in China, I ain't batting an eye. But I'll tell you this right now. I support the president, and I'll tell you why. I don't agree with everything he does. I don't know this will play out all that well, but I can say we were given the choice when we were putting this company together. Do we want Chinese-made skateboards or American-made skateboards? They said the Chinese boards are about $5 cheaper. And I said, no, we want American-made. And they said, but it's going to cost you more money. And I said, I don't care. We still sell our boards cheaper than all other companies. They are premium, professional, high-quality skateboards. We got a pro team. $55 for a board relative to the pro models at $65, $70, or even $90, and they're making them in China. They make them in China for pennies on the dollar using peasant labor so they can extract as much as they can from that system. Now, let me tell you, had we made our skateboards in China, a 34% tariff would mean a tremendous increase, making it untenable. We'd have no choice but to switch to American manufacturing. But guess what? We want American made to begin with. So I ain't even crying about it. Go to BooniesHQ.com, click the store, pick up your step-on Sneck and Find Out skateboard. Also, we got the boobies. You want a booby bird? There's a little booby bird, the boobies. And then, of course, we've got the right to arm bears, all American made. Made by Americans. The art is made by Americans. The screen printing done by Americans. The wood is done by Americans with North American rock maple. To be fair, the maple may come from either the Pacific Northwest or Canada. I'm not entirely sure, but I think full disclosure is important. If we bring in wood from Canada, actually, I'm pretty sure it is American because we were adamant on that, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure it's North American rock maple source in the Pacific Northwest. But I want to make sure, full disclosure for everybody, because we're not here to deceive. We are here to do what we can for the American workers. Now, here's the latest news, and we'll get through all of this. There's a lot to break down. Trump is threatening new 50% tariffs on China if Beijing doesn't remove retaliatory duties. Trump put out this statement on Truth Social, saying, yesterday, China issued retaliatory tariffs of 34% on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation. Despite my warning that any country that retaliates against the U.S. by issuing additional tariffs above and beyond their already existing long-term tariff abuse of our nation will be immediately met with new and substantially higher tariffs over and above those initially set. Therefore, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the U.S. will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. Additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with us will be terminated. Negotiations with other countries which have also requested meetings will begin taking place immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Right now, CNN tracking the markets. We are looking at the Dow down 2%, the S&P 500 1.57, and the Nasdaq 1.43. Over the weekend, the Nikkei index hit the circuit breaker and shut down, causing Dow futures to plummet something like 7 or 8%. Now, they've since recovered a little bit. So when you're seeing it down 2%, it could have been worse. The funny story, of course, is that when a rumor started to circulate that Trump would pause the tariffs, which was made up, by the way. So what happened is a Fox News host asked one of the Trump admin guys, would he consider a 3-month pause? He said, well, he'll decide what he wants to do when he wants to do it. This created a rumor there would be a pause. So everyone starts buying. The market jumps 10%. Then the White House comes out and says, fake news, it's not true. And then the market dips back down. It has been a wild day. Now, for most of you, many of you don't follow the markets or understand the economic portion. I'm not trying to be derogatory or disrespectful. I'm saying a lot of people don't follow this. When the market swings, whether up or down, people become millionaires and people lose money. I just want to say as an aside, Donald Trump has done more to eliminate millionaires and billionaires than the left has done in decades. I find that really funny because the populist right is not composed of millionaires and billionaires, and they ain't crying all that much about it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some tech bros and fin bros that are losing their minds over this, saying it's going to be an economic nuclear winter. I believe that was Bill Ackman. But you ain't moving the needle for MAGA. These working class people that largely don't have stocks, some do, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these people in the core base are just sitting here being like, I couldn't be more poor. I struggle. I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't have a retirement. I don't have a savings. And that goes especially true for millennials and Gen Z. So let's see. Now, I will say this. 50% tariff on China. Let me give you guys the breakdowns on the Boonies HQ skateboards we make. I could be wrong about this, so I want to preface that. But I'm pretty sure our boards basically run us something like, I think out the door, it's going to cost us, what does the numbers break out to? It's $35 a board, I'm pretty sure. And so we take $5 profit per board, and the team writer gets $15. I think that's what it is. Again, I could be wrong because I don't manage the stuff day to day. I run a lot of companies, but let me just, I want to be honest with how we run this. So it's my understanding that each and every one of these boards that we sell, made in America, is $35. And if we made it in China, it would have been $30. We would have saved $5 a board. If we were hit with a 50% tariff, that would have put our boards from 30 to 45, meaning we're not going to make a lot of money. We don't have the volume. So this is I want to stress this for all you guys. $15 to the team writer who has that board. It means they're probably doing a couple $100 to a couple thousand, depending on how well the board sells per month. That's their income as a professional writer. It's not a lot of money. Not enough to have a family, at least. So they need other sponsors. But we do pay more than any other board company. And then we only get $5 per board, and that covers electricity, construction. Ultimately, we do lose money as of right now because we are investing heavily to make sure this thing works. And the people who ride for the team receive, to the best of our abilities, a living wage. If we sold larger volume of boards, then they'd actually start being more successful, and that's what we hope and dream for. But this is why if people told us to go China, they said, get your boards made in China, take the extra $5. Ain't no way I'm doing that. Because that means we sacrifice the core of our nation, the workers of this country, the manufacturers who make skateboards. And I know many of you may not care about skateboards. I know I say this all the time, but we're talking about American industry here. An American sport, born and bred in America, pushed into the Olympics. This is part of the American pastime, the American tradition. I know it's not as big as baseball, football, or otherwise, but we have cultures in this country we care about. And I will not sell it out to Chinese peasant labor at the sacrifice of my culture, my community, and my country. That being said, had we done that deal, we would be underwater right now, stacked with a bunch of boards made from China and an inability to get new ones produced because of the tariffs. We'd be panicking, calling up distributors in America, trying to see if they could squeeze us in, and we would probably be out boards for months. But we did the right thing, and I ain't even crying about it right now. I am proud of the moves that we made because I put my money where my mouth is, and I believe in this country, and I believe in what we're doing. I hope everybody else learns that lesson. There may be negative consequences here. I certainly don't think it makes sense to tariff bananas. We don't grow bananas in here. I mean, I suppose if Trump wants us to set up greenhouses to grow bananas, fine. They'd still be more expensive. So if there were American banana growers in greenhouses, maybe there's an argument to be made there, but I don't know that we can produce the volume we need for certain products that are not grown in this country. Not that I'm a fan of how the U.S. handled bananas in the past. I do think it's funny, to be fair, because I'll say coffee, right? Because we do have the coffee business. We got no choice but to produce the actual coffee beans in those countries. That's how it works. And we'll gladly pay the tariffs on importing that, though I do think there's a limitation on how it makes sense. Fine. But the funny thing about bananas, just so you guys know, is, the U.S. corporations and the U.S. government sure did overthrow a couple of governments. I believe it was Honduras and Guatemala because we wanted cheap bananas. I'm not a fan of that either. So let's get our act together, right? Here's a post-millennial. Trump won't make tariff deal with China until trade deficit is fixed. I want that solved. A deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at worst going to be breaking even. But China would be the worst in the group because the deficit is so big and it's not sustainable. Indeed. Why do I have this? This is not, is this, did I pull this? Oh, I have this pulled up twice. We'll get to the memes in a second because we will address the memes. But currently, as we move on, down 2.12, S&P 1.6, NASDAQ 1.45. Pro-Trump billionaire Bill Ackman warns of economic nuclear winter as he calls for a 90-day pause on tariffs. The president's 10% baseline tariff began Saturday, hitting all U.S. imports except goods from Mexico and Canada. Further, tariffs on goods from 57 trading partners, including the European Union, come into effect April 9th. Asian and European markets plunged on opening Monday, with Germany's DAX down a staggering 10%. The stock 600 something 5.8. The UK's FTSE 100 tanked to its lowest level in a year. Black Monday started trending on X, a reference to the global and severe stock market crash of 1987, as uncertainty grows before the U.S. market opens. Now, this story, of course, was before the market opened, and then we saw some insanity, I guess. Experts say the signs of a serious crash are there, with the S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Dow, the three main U.S. market indices, on course to open Monday morning down as much as 6%. Now, where are we currently? Like I said, 2, 1.6, 1.4. It ain't the apocalypse they said it was going to be. It is kind of bad. But now, my friends, world's most powerful banker breaks his silence on Trump tariffs to issue a terrifying warning. I would just like to say, I am not really all that much interested in hearing from the warnings of these bankers. Now, I don't want to speak for JP Dimon specifically because there's many more than just him, but let me hearken back some time. Can you believe how long it's been? Almost been 20 years since the 2008 crash. When the bankers were playing fast and loose with our houses, they knew they were doing it, and they burned this country up. I don't want to say they burned it to the ground, but they certainly destroyed the investments, the wealth, and savings of so many people. For what? What a ridiculously insane system. And it's about time somebody, Trump, I guess, took a sledgehammer and said, this will not stand. You've got so many metrics showing that this system cannot sustain itself. Now, look, we wonder why it is we have a fertility crisis. We had a debate on the Culture War podcast where a never-Trumper conservative argued we should bring in migrants, he didn't say illegal, but migrants to offset the population disparity for Social Security. Okay, or we can have kids. The problem is we're not. Why? One of the reasons is cultural, one's technological, and one's financial. Obviously, Gen Z, they can't afford a house. Only about 1 in 4 Gen Z so far own a home. Now, you might think that's actually a lot, right? That means 75% of Gen Z are not going to be able to start a family or get their lives in order. That is not good. Meanwhile, Gen Xers, 3 out of 4 own homes. We cannot continue to prioritize the elderly. A nation crumbles when you do that. But sure. Before we get into all that, let's hear what Jamie Dimon has to say. In his annual letter to shareholders, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase wrote that trade wars started by Trump risk driving up prices at American stores, undermining global alliances, and slowing economic growth. The warning comes as global stock markets, including pre-market trading in the U.S., continue the carnage that shed trillions of dollars last week. JP Morgan raised its likelihood of recession from 40 to 60%. I'm going to say it again. First, it is not good if prices go up. Second, it is not good that the market is going down. That being said, it is substantially worse that Gen Z cannot get their lives started. A 22-year-old is supposed to be buying a house. They're supposed to have a salary that can afford them a house, and they're supposed to be getting ready to have babies, if not having them already. This has been the reality for all of human history and only started to come, it only started to shift in the past couple of generations. Industrialization has led to a lot of negative consequences, namely, younger people have struggling. And it's not just industrialization. I'm trying to put past the bill on technology. In the 50s, post-industrialization, we were doing very, very well. You could be a high school graduate, married, with 2.5 kids, a white picket fence, an automobile, free from debt, 2 weeks vacation off of one salary today. How are you supposed to have kids if the mother has to work? How are you supposed to raise a family if you can't even own a place to live? You will constantly be struggling, and thus, we are not in a position where Gen Z is easily going to create the next generation. I think Trump sees this. I think he recognizes this is beyond whether or not the elderly are going to be able to pay for their to fund their retirements. This may be a terrible trade-off. It may be detrimental for a lot of reasons. But if we continue to prioritize the elderly, young people will suffer and this country will crumble. This could be the crumbling happening right now. It could be that what we're seeing is Trump simply saying, all I did was pull the Jenga block. I didn't knock the tower over. The tower was on the verge of collapse as it was. Maybe. Or maybe he's got a plan for a long-term fix. Honestly, I don't know. But Jamie Dimon and all these other people saying graph go up, but graph go up. How does that benefit any individual in this country, be it a millennial or younger, trying to buy a home for the first time? You know, I think it's only only half of millennials actually own houses too. Now, I will say, to be fair, you don't always want to own a house. You don't always. There are circumstances where renting is better. Trust me. If you are starting your career, you're not intending on getting married anytime soon, renting can be just fine. However, this system, as it stands, is resulting in a lower fertility rate across the board, increased mass migration from desperate Democrats, and an inability to solve the Social Security problem. They say we have about 10 years before Social Security becomes insolvent, destabilizes. And although many arguments from the left is that, yes, but it only dropped their payments down to about 70%. Oh, yeah, that's going to sustain them. They're going to be able to pay their rents. They can't do it now. The system will begin to break down. It's not going to be pretty. Now, the good news is there may be a fast exit. Trump's top economic advisor says 50 countries have reached out to negotiate tariffs. White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett defended President Donald Trump's tariffs on Sunday, refuting the idea they will cost American consumers more. He says, I got a report from the U.S. trade rep last night that more than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. But they're doing that because they understand they bear a lot of the tariff. And so I don't think that you're going to see a big effect on the consumer in the U.S. because I do think that the reason why we have a persistent long-run trade deficit, these people have very inelastic supply. They've been dumping goods into the country in order to create jobs, say in China, Hassett told ABC News This Week anchor George Stephanopoulos. Perhaps. You know what I can say is there are many people on the right that are raising warning flags saying there are people who voted for Trump. They are bowing out. In this post from Ryan Saavedra, a good friend of mine who is conservative right-wing Republican just sent me this. You start messing around with people's investments in 401ks and you're going to lose support fast. Dude said, no ish, I'm voting Democrat. Legit thought I'd never say that. Newsom for sure. Any Dem in Congress. Just insane this is happening. He says, can I take a screenshot of that and post it? Will not include your name. Sure. Even if Trump reverses course Monday, it's too late. Can't trust him again. Hauls out some random chart with made up numbers and triggers the worst 3-day crash since the 80s. Done. The one thing I want to say is, for a lot of people, you just buy now. Like the market will recover. That's why the argument is if you are nearing retirement, this is not that big a deal. You don't check the day to day, you check the long term, and the long term is going to be neutral or good. If you are not retired and you're panicking about your retirement account, you're probably going to end up in a bad position. I'm going to tell you what to do. Okay. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying the argument is wait and see how this plays out. You're talking about long-term investments. Market volatility is a thing. For current retirees, yeah, that's scary because you're like, how much can I pull out of my account this month for my budget? And your budget just got slashed by 25%. That can be particularly worrying. So it's a no laughing matter. That being said, does support right now in the off season matter? Well, the one thing I can say is as a media producer, thank you, Donald Trump, for forcing people to pay attention to their reality. Let me tell you guys, the year after a presidential election, this is the dead year in political media. So for me that I'm, largely political and somewhat cultural, we see revenue decline. We see audience decline. It is what it is. People voted. They're tired. They say, I am burned out. I want to watch football. And I say, okay, American or European, whatever. It's all fine by me. And then we typically see views go down and in turn, revenue goes down. Trump is making this move. I'm kidding about the benefit. Trump is making this move now because it will have the least amount of political impact. At least that's my opinion. You do this today, and here's what happens. Next year, as we're entering midterm season and everyone's angry about their retirements, the Republicans band together, lobby Donald Trump, do some big moves which boost everyone's retirement accounts, and then right at the last minute, Trump says, don't stop us now. Look how much money you're making. If people are pissed off over this, the reason why I show you this one is, for one, it is true. There are people on the right who are upset over this. These are fair weather voters. They don't really care about politics. They don't care about wokeness. They don't care about culture war. They care about money. It's the economy, stupid. And right now they're hurting. The inverse is true. Trump starts making these people money. They're going to be very happy about it. Now, what happens if Donald Trump tries to make them money and then Democrats come out against it because they have to? That could be a long-term play. Trump may be thinking, and I don't know, tank the market on purpose, and then right before the midterms, we'll build it back up. Everyone will be extremely happy, say things are better than ever. Trump and Republicans take all the credit for it, and that's the political game. I don't know if it's actually their strategy, to be completely honest. I think Trump's strategy is this. I think they're largely looking at, this is a problem. This system will collapse. Now is the time to make drastic change because the negative impacts won't be felt politically. It's also why Trump wants Elise Stefanik to stay in Congress. He's doing this move now. If Elise Stefanik were to bow out, she'd fit a very tight race because people are losing it. Look, the people on the right who are saying nobody's mad about this, not true, dude. Of course people are mad about this. However, the people on the left, like this meme right here, this one really makes me laugh. I got to be completely honest. Take a look at this. Oliver Alexander with the meme. It's a guy in a MAGA hat, and he's wearing a ribbon that says, fell for it again. That's their meme, by the way. And he says, there seems to have been a mistake. I plan on owning a factory and making millions. And Trump says, so the effing sock, with a shotgun in his hand. You know, my response is, I'm loving the left proving they were for the rich the entire time. Oh no, Americans want to make stuff in factories, as if the MyPillow factory workers who make socks are crying. So here's the MyPillow socks. All made a shout out MyPillow, by the way. I think we still have I don't know. There may be a promo code with MyPillow if you use Tim. They haven't done a sponsorship. They were sponsoring us for a little bit. We haven't done it in a while, but that promo code may exist. Look at this. Socks made in America. Look at old American flag. Made in America socks. The meme from the left really hits the nail on the head. How many posts, how many retweets has this guy gotten? 182,000 views, 171 retweets. This is how they view everybody. They don't want to make socks. They don't want to make socks. Guess what Americans do? The Americans who work for MyPillow, who make pillows, socks, bed sheets, and otherwise, they're happy to have jobs, and good paying jobs too. They stand with Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell put them in his commercial. He brags about how it's made in America, how these are real Americans working real jobs. What reality do these liberals live in? So the effing sock. I got news for you guys. You don't need a shotgun because they're literally working there by choice and getting paid well. What a ridiculous world these people live in. Let me tell you, the scumbags these people are. They have nothing but disdain for low-skill workers. Remember when The View had on What's-Her-Face Osborne? And she was like, if you deport these Mexicans, who's going to clean your toilet? And they were like, whoa, we can't say that. We can't say the quiet part out loud. Yo, here at Timcast, the people who clean up and make sure everything is presentable, which is one of the most important things in running a business, they're Americans and they like their jobs. And we pay them well for the job they do. So let me just stress this to you guys. I need socks. You need socks. And maybe you want to go hippy-dippy barefoot, fine, by all means. I need the studio cleaned. We have 30 plus individuals every day. They come in and out of this building. There's cans of Spindrift strewn all about because I drink like 47 of these a day. Not really. I probably drink like 2 or 3. They're amazing. Not sponsored by them, by the way. So we need someone to come and clean everything up. We have bathrooms. They're disgusting. We need someone to do that job. We pay someone to do that job. they're an American. They're really good at what they do. The people who work here to clean up, if they did not work here, we could not have guests. Imagine what would happen if we invited some member of Congress and they walk in and the whole place smells like human waste and there's crust and grime everywhere and they'd be like, I ain't sitting in here. This is disgusting. The job of making socks, making shirts, making pants, cleaning the floors are extremely important, and I have tremendous respect for the people who do that. I've heard these stories. People work in fast food, and then they're like, someone's on bathroom duty, and the person walks in the bathroom and sees what happened when a homeless guy went in there, and they quit right on the spot. You probably heard stories like that, too. They're like, I got a line. I got a limit. And that means most of the employees who do that job, tremendous respect for them. A job has to be done. There is the world that these liberals live in with this. Here's what I'm trying to say. When Trump says sow the effing sock, they are telling you they have disdain for you. They do not respect what you do. They look down upon you. On the right, it's the inverse. It's like, you made my sock? Thank you. I really needed those. I didn't know anybody who made socks. We got somebody who cleans up around here. Thank you so much. If this place gets messy, we kind of freak out. And then I'm calling like, we need someone to get in here who can clean this. I don't got time. Imagine if I spent 2 hours every day just cleaning. I'd not be able to do the show. This is how they view you, how they view low-skill workers, and this is why they give you the world they give you. Now, Market Watch says that this is pre-opening, by the way, risk of a 90-point tumble. We are currently 900 point. We're currently we are down 667 in the Dow, 63 in the S&P, and 150 in the Nasdaq. So not as bad as they thought. But gold broke 3,000. Holy crap! By the way, and oil dipped below $60, which is actually pretty worrying. It really is. Let's refresh this and see if we get some updated numbers on this one. Stocks resume slump as Trump threatens China with additional. There you go. And look at this. The percentage change is only about a point. VIX, 9.4. Interesting. Here's where it gets fun, my friends. Opinion, as of this morning. Steve Burns, a 50% correction is probable. Why this veteran stock trader is 100% in cash. I don't know, man. I don't know if he's right. But I do want to talk to you about why I think what Trump is doing is going to be a huge boon for Gen Z. So smash that like button, my friends. Share this show with everyone you know. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out boonieshq.com. Pick up your Step on Sneck and find out American-made, American-pressed skateboard. Let's read the news. From Market Watch, are they going to get this one? It looks like the Trump admin is trying to cause a bear market in equities so they can get people to buy bonds and drive mortgage yields down. Interesting. Veteran stock trader Steve Burns learned this lesson the hard way. It's better to be early than broke. Burns is a popular figure on social media where he addresses experienced and novice traders alike. In a Market Watch interview last December, Burns declared the U.S. stocks were in the greatest bubble in the history of civilization. He predicted that the U.S. market would soon suffer a correction, and has been spot on so far. With the Trump admin's trade tariffs tanking stock markets in the U.S. and worldwide, Burns said he moved his portfolio completely to cash, at least for the time being. In this interview, which was conducted last week as the global market sell-off accelerated, Burns said he's been surprised by the speed and ferociousness of the market slide, and speculates how Trump's tariffs could impact stocks this year. 4 months ago, you were bearish on the U.S. stock market. With the market selling off, do you think we're close to a bottom? Burns says, in the short term, I'm very bearish. This is a historical crash, and a 50% correction is probable over the next 9 months to a year. But I'm long-term bullish. At some point, this is going to work out. But right now, the market is trying to reprice every company on an individual basis based on their risk exposure to tariffs. Oil is signaling a huge recession, even though OPEC reduced its crude oil production. Market Watch says, how has this tariff-induced sell-off affected your portfolio? He says, on April 3rd, I moved to cash. I dipped into small caps that morning, but got stopped out. I went to cash because this looks like a macro tariff tantrum crash that has very little to do with technical analysis. Everything looked great from a technical standpoint before the tariffs, but now the technicals are broken. Everything relies on how quickly the Trump administration can come to trade agreements, especially with China. If not, there could be a depression, especially in other countries. They asked, besides tariffs, what else is a catalyst for the sell-off? You said technical indicators were strong. He says the AI bubble popped with DeepSeek. the Chinese AI app. I don't know if we'll get back to the highs of the AI sector stocks, but I think that NVIDIA is still a good long-term play because they are the supplier of the chips. Alphabet, Meta Platforms, Amazon, all got popped when people realized the pricing was not equivalent to the value of their business models. That being said, NVIDIA, Google, Meta, and Amazon are all up. Apple is down 4.89. Now, ultimately, the question is, why does this matter? From Business Insider, the wealthiest 10% of Americans own 93% of stocks, even with market participation at a record high. You think the bottom 90% is crying about this right now? Some people are, liberals. I showed this one in my morning segment, but it bears repeating. It's from Jack Posobiec a few days ago. Corporate equities going up till 2020, what do we have? 2023, and mutual fund shares by generation. Silent generation, but this also includes the lost and the greatest generations. In 1990, owned about 80% of corporate equities in mutual fund shares. The boomers in early 1990 owned about 20%. Today, the boomers have roughly 50+%, and Generation X holds about 25%. Gen Z isn't on the map, and millennials hold what appears to be about 2 to 3%. Yo, millennials are in their 40s. Bro, I'm 39, okay? Millennials are ranging from like low 30s to like early 40s right now. How is it that the boomers in the 90s, in their 30s, had 25%? They were in their 30s. They had 25% in their 30s. Millennials right now have less than 10% of where boomers were when they were adults. Gen X today are entering their 50s, and they have around 25. So even when they were in their 30s, when you go back, Gen X held quite a bit less. The impact of this is on the elderly. I'm not trying to disparage them or drag them. They're not all wealthy and well off, though it is the overwhelming majority of the wealthy who own stocks in the first place. Let me just say, Gen Z ain't even on the map. Very few Gen Zers have access to this money, and the millennials are holding an empty bag. So where do we end up, my friends? First, let me stress the next major factor here, as pointed out by Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen. Democrats are the party of the rich. People don't want to admit it, but here's spiked. The Democrats are now the party of the rich. Here's reason from 2023. Democrats say they're fighting equality, but many of their policies favor the rich. Here's Newsweek. I raised millions for Democrats at the DNC. I realized they're the party of the rich. And then you have another Newsweek. Being the party of the rich could cost them the 2024 election. And it did. And it did. First-time home buyer. r/first-time home buyer on Reddit. Is Gen Z screwed? The only way someone can afford a home going forward is if they live in a household with over 200K income. Gen Z was stuck school while home prices, I don't know what that means. Home price and interest rates were nice between 2008 and 2021. It's over for a middle-class family to obtain any nice home over 2,000 square feet in most major cities along the East and West Coast. Seems like relocating is the only option for these folks if their dreams include being a homeowner. I asked Google, what percent of Gen Z owns homes? In 2023, roughly 26.3% of adult Gen Zers, those born between 1997 and 2012, owned homes. A slight increase from 26.2 in 2020, according to Redfin. Now, it is expected that we will see this number go up for Gen Z. Why? As they're getting older, they're going to be making more money. As boomers start to pass on, there's going to be a big impact. It's going to affect how wealth is distributed across the board. But oh boy, I hope you are ready for the greatest housing market collapse you have ever seen, my friends. I'm about to describe to you a problem for which is getting little attention, but is going to destroy wealth in this country way beyond anything Trump has said in the next 10 years. So you want to talk about a fourth turning? Check this one out. Housing prices right now may go down, but they are at astronomically high levels. There are properties near us that were selling a few years ago for $200 that are now at $400. A house that was at $3 is at $5, and it makes no sense. But they're selling. Who are they selling to? They ain't selling to Gen Z. Gen Z can't afford these houses. They don't have the income. They don't have the wealth. They can't buy stocks. They can't buy houses. Okay. What about millennials? Baby boomers will pass on. In the next 10 or so years, we are going to see a massive decline of silent generation individuals and the properties and wealth that they hold. The reason why in that map of equities, the silent generation is declining is because they're dying. I'm not trying to be crass or morbid, but it's true. Baby boomers then begin to inherit portfolios. Here's the problem. When you create a generational wealth gap, a baby boomer will own a certain, let's get the numbers here. They say, I thought I had the full numbers. Let me see if I can find because Gen X, I think, they have it right here. Gen X home ownership is 72%. So that means just about 3 out of 4 Gen Xers own a home. They're not going to be buying houses. They got some. They're going to mention millennials is about half. Okay. Gen Z is where the demand lies. But they can't buy houses because they don't have the money. How the heck is a Gen Zer going to save up $40,000 to buy a house? Maybe you buy a cheap one in the middle of nowhere. Okay, $100,000 house, you're going to need $20,000 down. Good luck. The baby boomer will pass on and they'll die. And their children will inherit those properties. This means that some millennials and Gen Z individuals are going to instantly inherit houses. But hey, Tim, you say, won't that increase their net worth overnight? Nope, it will not. Right now, if a house is $500,000, that's based on who's able to buy it. And who's buying it? Largely boomers, some Gen Xers, less millennials, and almost no Gen Zers. They're too expensive. Those who hold most of the wealth, likely to be older, are the ones who are going to be buying these properties. When boomers start dying, the demand for these houses will plummet. I should say the demand is still there, but no one can afford them. So what happens? You got a guy right now who's Gen Z's 25. Maybe he's got boomer parents. Let's say younger millennial probably makes more sense. 10 years from now, the baby boomers are passing on. And now you've got a 40-year-old who inherits the home from his mom and dad who pass on. Rest in peace. I'm not trying to be mean or morbid. He says, wow, this is an $800,000 house, but I don't need to live there. I already own a home. I'm going to sell it. He puts it on the market, $800,000, no buyers, because Gen Z can't afford a house that expensive. They don't have any stored wealth. The way things are going right now in 10 years, there will be a slight increase, but for the most part, not a lot. So what happens? He goes to the agent and he says, I don't care. Just sell the thing. And they're like, look, we've got no offers at 800. He says, then sell it. Just lower the price, do 750, no offers. 700, no offers. 600, no offers. The prices begin to plummet. That's scenario number 1. When Gen Z tries to buy the houses, they go to them and say, look, I can't afford an $800,000 house. If nobody can, there's no demand. So the prices begin to tank. The net worth and value for a lot of people goes down. But hey, those houses were collateral in a lot of loans. Here comes the pop. Along comes Big Daddy Fed and says, we're not going to allow the market to implode. These houses must be sold for what they're worth. Scenario 2, private equity funds start buying up these houses at these rates funded by the Fed. Free money printed out of thin air to prop up the equity, the value held by the millennial generation inheriting these properties, which does not solve for the fact that Gen Alpha has literally nothing, can't get a job, has 0 stocks, and they're living 10 people to a single apartment. This trend cannot continue. And if nobody brought this up, and nobody's really talking about it in media, they're missing the big picture. Unless the Fed bails out the inheritance of the millennial and older Gen Z, then they're going to inherit nothing from their parents because there will be no demand. A market economy and imaginary wealth requires that people have the ability to buy these things. Otherwise, the market corrects, and what can be paid for can then be paid for. But if a house is going for $1 million today, Gen Z ain't buying it. And when millennials don't need to buy it and aren't going to be upgrading to massive expensive homes, maybe they inherit it and try to rent it out. The next scenario would be oligopoly. A small handful of millennials owning large amounts of properties, renting them out to Gen Z at cheap prices while holding insane value on those houses because they don't want to lose $200,000 in the property. Now, I can't predict exactly what will happen, but I can say economic insanity. Ukraine is a really great example of how the oligopoly took shape. You had properties in Ukraine 10 years ago that it was a two-bedroom condo for $300,000 US. Now, how was a Ukrainian going to pay for that? They couldn't. The oligarchs owned them all. Foreign investors bought them up. But a Ukrainian only made $400 a month average salary. So what rent were they paying? Yeah, $100 per month. At least that's what I was told by my friends who were in the country at the time. Not to single out Ukraine, as they're singled out quite a bit, but that's just one country I looked at that was under oligopoly, run by a handful of ultra-wealthy elites. The U.S. will go in that direction unless something changes. And you will get either a corrupt Ukraine-style government or a Communist Party Chinese-style government when people get mad and they take over. You raise 3 generations off that system, and what happens? They're all going to be communists. They're going to say our only opportunity is to seize the wealth from those that have it. Then they will. The Free Press writes, why buying a home seems impossible for Gen Z. Young people are struggling with the high cost of living. They're skeptical that Trump or Harris can fix it. It's nearly impossible. This is from September. In 2008, I was 22 years old. I had just turned 22. And I remember when the market crash happened, I barely batted an eye. I had heard murmurs here and there. I didn't really think much of it. I could not have been poorer. I was making, I don't know, like 10, 11 bucks an hour. Actually, no, at that point I was doing decently well. I think I was doing like 20 bucks an hour. Working the nonprofit circuit for the most part, playing music in the subway after that, and busking on the streets in Wrigleyville in Chicago. A lot of money to be made. You go after a baseball game happens, everybody's drunk, you play some top 40s, you make 200 bucks in an hour. No joke. How long can you really play songs straight for? You play for an hour or two with a buddy, split the money, put it in the bank. It's not so bad. But granted, I was sleeping on a couch for the most part, could barely afford rent for my own apartment, and that was the nature of things. In this scenario, as a young, broke individual, and it wasn't even as bad as Gen Z has it right now, when the market hit, I didn't feel nothing. I didn't have stocks. I didn't have equities. I didn't have a trust fund. I didn't have savings. I didn't care. I did know some rich kids. They were upset, but shrugged. You know, it's funny thing is, I knew some rich kids whose parents gave them small, like fund and small accounts, 500, 100,000 here or there. It is relatively small for how wealthy they were. And their attitudes were, they laughed. They were like, I don't know, like the market will correct itself. One person told me, honestly, when my stock goes down, everyone goes down with it. So I'm not really worried about it. If my fund went to zero, we have a lot of other things to worry about. That's how they viewed it. Me, I was kind of like, I got nothing, so I don't care. Didn't affect me. That's what I think is going on right now. I imagine Gen Z, the rich kids, yeah, maybe they're upset. But most of the younger generation probably doesn't care at all. I'm telling you, they're probably watching the TV and laughing if they are. And many of them probably, if they're paying attention, buying the dip with what little they can. It's easier than ever to invest. So maybe now Gen Z might actually start buying up some stocks through Robinhood or something. The opportunity for a lot of these people has just begun thanks to what Donald Trump is doing. Not that he's doing it on purpose. I honestly don't know. Trump says Fed Chair Powell should cut interest rates and stop playing politics. Well, what's happening? Well, what's going to happen? Newsweek says, historically, recessions have led to decreased demand in the housing market, resulting in slower home sales, and in some cases, declining home prices. During economic downturns, consumer confidence typically wanes, leading to reduced spending on significant investments like homes. Consequently, sellers may need to adjust their expectations, leading to more favorable conditions for buyers. This means there will be an increased opportunity for the younger generation that needs homes to buy them. This means people who hold investment properties may seek to offload them, or if they are offloading them, try and get better rates. This means people who have retirements may need to liquidate to pay their day-to-day operations. Trump, whether it's intentional or not, is making moves that have a tendency towards, I'm not saying it will, negatively impact the older groups while positively impacting the younger groups. It's not a guarantee. We don't know exactly what Trump's plan is or how this will play out. This could ultimately just blow up in everybody's faces. But if it does, and we end up going into a collapsed society post-Roman Empire, I gotta warn y'all, it ain't the strapping young 24-year-olds who are going to be deeply impacted the most. It is going to be the elderly that rely on a social order to survive. If we go back to the Stone Age overnight, which was not going to happen, but let's just say it did, who's hurt? Yo, I got to tell you, 25-year-old dude's going to be sitting there and being like, guess I should figure out how to hunt and farm. 60-year-old's going to be like, I can't do anything. Not all 60-year-olds. I'm just saying the average that have built a life and a retirement fund relying on a younger generation that doesn't exist. Take a look at Social Security. How many people built everything thinking that there was going to be a younger generation to keep funding this social order and this system? And now the younger generation is saying no to this. There are so many possible scenarios in which this is the apocalypse for the younger generation. Here's one. With Social Security about to go bust, you've got the arguments on the left saying, no, it will just pay out what's paid into it, meaning the average person may only receive 50 to 60, maybe 70% of what they're getting now. What do you think those people are going to do? They're going to vote, and they're going to vote for more. And this means stripping the buying power of everybody else. It is not sustainable. You cannot vote to take more from the younger generation, to make them forced indentured servants. They're not going to abide by it. And the moment Gen Z simply says no or checks out, the system will implode. We're looking at a generation of young men that don't work. Hikikomori, they call them in Japan. They lock themselves in their rooms and they play video games all day. They've checked out. They're living with their parents. They don't got to worry about too much because food's cheap. It's bad for a country. Everything will implode. My friends, whatever Trump does, whether he does or doesn't, it's going to happen. This system is unsustainable. The numbers show us this. Trump's just being proactive. So to the right, who says, who cares? The stocks don't matter. To the left, who says, oh no, the economy. I'm just like, listen, I'm leaning more towards Trump on this one, whether intentionally or otherwise. Donald Trump, if he doesn't do it, the market breaks. If he does do it, maybe he salvages something. I don't know what his plan is. I don't know what his advisors are saying. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And so do you. We're going to grab your chats, however, before we send you all over to Russell Brand. So smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. Follow me on X and Instagram at TimCast. Once again, shout out to Steven Crowder and the Mug Club for shouting out this show, having us jump up to almost 50,000 concurrent viewers for the morning show. It is an honor and a privilege to do this show for you guys Monday through Thursday at noon, and to kick it off to Russell Brand for the noon hour. We're going to grab some of your chats. So let's, first thing I want to do is pull up old Russell here. Because is he not live today? I don't see his live currently set. Maybe it will be soon, but we'll get to it. It could be the quartering. It changes. Arsonist YouTube says, hey, Tim, would be really cool to see Asmongold as a guest. What do you think? Absolutely. Asmongold, shout out. You should definitely come on the show. We'd love to have you. Big fan. I've seen some of your content, don't watch it regularly, full disclosure, but it would be very cool. Very cool. Philip Mitchell says, 48-year-old male in PA. I have a 401k that is hurting. I am not mad. The stock market could go belly up for all I care. It's time to bring back the middle class and help them get a decent job. Hear, hear. Arsonist adds, 35-year-old. I've been in my career making $58K a year. I make more than my dad, a taxi driver, ever did, but I have less than he did. I'm struggling and have zero to lose. Let it burn. Wow, man. The Crimson Trigger says, yo, Timmy, would you ever consider getting anyone from Compound Censored, Gavin McInnes, Anthony Cumia, or Jim Godin IRL, or The Culture War? On a side note, I'm turning 29 today. Happy birthday. Shout out. And yeah, absolutely. Have to look into it. We'll see what we can do. I think I could have a really interesting, I'd love to have a conversation with Gavin McInnes about Vice, being that he helped found it and I worked there. Actually started Vice News, as it were. Vice had a brand that they called Vice News. So they would do the Vice docs. And if it was a very news relevant thing, they would say Vice News. But the official channel Vice News started when I went there and lobbied for it. It took like 6 months. And I wasn't really thinking about starting anything. So I don't want to take full credit. What basically happened was I went to Vice. I said, I do field reporting on the ground. I live stream. Look, I'm featured in all these places. I had an offer from Al Jazeera and a funding offer from Google. Google was talking about doing a grant for my channels. And I went to Vice and said, but I want to do documentaries with you guys because I can do live, but I need video on demand. 6 months later, they said, deal. Little did I know, thinking I was smart, when I was like, haha, look at me. Vice went to Google and said, hey, you know that guy you really like? We'll take him. Do a deal with us. It'll be massive. We'll hire a team. So I was the first person hired for Vice News. They launched Vice News because of me, as per Shane Smith said at the Knight Foundation Awards. And I tremendously respect it. It's an honor and a privilege, though. It is sad what Vice turned into. But they ended up hiring a bunch of people, and Gavin McInnes was the founder of Vice. Vice News was an offshoot later on that I co-founded, essentially, as a component of the company, and was the first person hired and lobbied for. But they had a news component additionally. And as it was described by Shane, they started doing news-ish stuff with documentaries. He said that he was, I think he was in China, and he saw all these cars in the road, and they were in a traffic jam, and he was like, it is insane that they want 3% more cars every year when we're stuck as it is. Doesn't make sense. And then he said they had no intention of doing actual field reporting and on the ground work until, and he points to me, he says, Tim Pool came in and pitched us, and then we ended up rolling that out. So I'm a big fan of Shane. It's sad what happened to Vice. I think he's made some mistakes, but it's unfortunate. Would be interesting to hear what Gavin had to say about that. Copium Poppy says, check out our new album, Sybil the Soothsayer, available at copiumpoppies.com. Defense Man says, I used your promo code and saved $40 on MyPillow socks. So we were doing a run with MyPillow for a while where they sponsored Timcast IRL. We haven't done any sponsorships with them in a while. We're still fans, though, and maybe we will in the future. It's just, we were negotiating contracts with different sales teams, and then, we did a deal with Rumble. Maybe they'll kick back on, but the promo code should still work, and shout out to MyPillow, made in America. Samurai Villain says, if Gen Z can't afford it, he says, is there another chat there that's not here? Looks like that's a second chat, but we don't have your first one, buddy. He says, or if Gen Z can't afford private equity or foreign investors. But and yes, if Gen Z can't buy it, right. When it comes to houses, you'll start seeing foreign investors, but Trump seems like he's not going to let that happen, or the Fed will provide ridiculous funding to these firms. So who knows, my friends? Indeed. Oh, very interesting, my friends. Russell Brand's stream coming up in 3 minutes. I'm facing prison. Here's the truth about what's going on. I've been asked by a handful of people because the Rumble morning lineup, Monday through Thursday, I kick off to Russell Brand. But so people have asked, aren't you worried about the PR? I mean, you're promoting his show, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about accusations. Plus, they're 30 years old. So, they're like 26, 27 years old or whatever. Between 20 and 27. I don't know. Innocent until proven guilty. We'll see what Russell has to say about it. In the meantime, 30-year-old allegations don't mean a whole lot to me. So I don't know what to say. Arson says, Tim, I'm not paying attention because I care that stocks are dripping. I'm paying attention because I'm rooting for this. I voted for this. Well, there you go. Guitarist Gabe says, I'm the youngest in the millennial generation. I got married at 25, had our first kid within the past year. Wife stays home now, and I'm the sole provider for my family. He says, let's see, Guitarist Globe. He's got another chat coming up. Let me try and find this one. I couldn't even afford to rent an apartment when my wife was working, had to move back in with our folks, and have been living with them for 4 years now. I had given up on the thought of living on our own again. Wow. That's sad, man. But hopefully we'll see some big changes. Let's see what we got here. What is this? Davida says, go to lolk.com, play hilarious satirical political games, brought to you from the Timcast community. Here. Guys, join our Discord server. Go to timcast.com, click join us. The Discord server has multiple tiers. Sign up for $10. You get access to the standard chat room hangout and some bonuses. After 6 months, you get a massive upgrade. This is a screening process because creepos try to destroy the community, and so we're protecting those that are longstanding members. I think it's 6 months. Or sign up for $25, bypass everything, and get instant upgrade access. And the $100 club is the Timcast Elite Club. Very few are in, and it's a private club for the elites with private access. So what we're doing for the Culture War Live, the elite members have private access to the show, of course, and like first come, first serve. And then we're limited, of course, because we want to make sure every regular member can get in as well. It's tough. I don't like doing money gate things where it's like, if you're not rich, you can't come, because I'm not all about that. But we have to balance keeping out the crazies, letting everybody else in, providing benefit to those that support the community and make it operate. So there are challenges. If we want to do like 500 seats, let's say we want to do right now we're doing Timcast Live pilot with 40 seats. That's going to cost a couple grand to run the show. If we want to do plus security, so probably a little bit more than that, maybe $5,000. If we want to do 500, now we're looking at a big venue. It's going to cost us like $20,000. Not something we can just do every month. Very difficult. If we want to do like 1,000, now we're getting into 30, 40,000 territory. So we're going to pilot this first, see what general demand is, and then we're going to see if we can increase this, because I would love to do once a month a 1,000-seater venue sold out every month, the Culture War debate live. That would be the dream. We did an event in Miami, and we did we just about sold out. It was like a 1,000 venue, and it was like 900 and something sold. So we could maybe do it. Granted, Miami is harder to get to, so if we're in the DC area, it might be a lot easier. But we're going to slowly build it up. We'll see if we can get it. My friends, it is time to hang out with Russell Brand and hear what he has to say about these allegations. The raid shall commence now. We are hitting that raid. Did it not go? Here we go. Confirm raid. Let's roll. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I'm also going to post the link to Russell's show right here and pin the message. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. More to come. Though I will not be here for Timcast IRL tonight. We're going to have some epic guests here. There is something very tremendous happening. I will be in DC for, you better believe it. If it's got me in DC, it must be big. So the plan right now is as far as I know, I won't be here for Timcast IRL tonight, and nothing I can do about it. When big stuff happens, big stuff happens. So we may have some big news, but meetings, they call us up, right? Check out Russell Brand's show on Rumble. Thank you for hanging out on the Rumble Morning Live. Stay tuned. We will be back tonight for the show, though. Phil will be hosting, and I may be here. Just keep in mind. But maybe likely Phil Labonte will be hosting. Chris Pavlovsky of Rumble will be joining, so you don't want to miss it, as well as Ezra Levant. It's going to be epic. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all then.